Hi guys, let's go. Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm the cat gardener. My name is Diana and I have a mini urban garden in St. Louis. Today I will finally show you my autumn crops now that it's October. Autumn crops can be very difficult to get started in St. Louis because we have long and intense summers. So imagine that they have to germinate and survive the heat of August. And then there's not a lot of actual perfect growing temperature time because our autumns are very, very short. So there's a rush to get them going before the frost comes in 1 month. And lastly, because I don't have a lot of space in my garden, there's a constant balancing act between trying to get my summer crops to last as long as possible and trying to get my autumn crops ready. But there's always a competition for space. So I'm always searching for space and I'm always trying to plant wherever I can, whenever I can, and come along with me to see what I do. We're in my front yard right now under a maple tree, which provides a microclimate. So when I started a lot of these fall crops in August, it was really important that they got proper shade. Otherwise, they would not have been able to make it. This maple tree provides two functions. So shade when I really need it for the baby seedlings in August. And when the leaves of the tree go away in late fall to winter time, I get a really nice southern sunlight that comes through and allows me to continue growing these crops here. And most of these are containers here, and that's actually one of the problems with growing under a maple tree, that the roots are really extensive and very hungry and able to compete with tiny little vegetables for resources for water. I'm not able to plant in the ground, unfortunately, due to this competition. And so I do everything in these containers instead. I've got some stuff planted here that's growing really nicely. I've got some empty spaces here. So what I want to do is be conscientious of the limited time I have before frost comes. It's about 1 month. So I want fast growing seeds. And today I'll be doing arugula, which should mature in like a month, and spinach, which can mature in a month as well. So the tricky thing about spinach is that it's hard to get them going in the fall. They prefer being a spring crop because they prefer the cold. And during the spring, you normally go from cold weather to, the weather warms up with time. And these guys would much rather have that than being planted in August when it's really warm. And, they don't do well. They don't germinate when it's warm out. So I found out about a method where you kind of try to simulate the natural tendency, the natural proclivity of these guys by putting the seeds inside the freezer. You can do that for a few days, and then afterwards you transfer it into the refrigerator, and then afterwards you bring them out to put into the soil, which kind of simulates the natural cycle where they're going from the cold to the warm in the springtime. And I hope that works. It's my first time trying this method, so we'll see how much germination I can get. Also in my front yard, I have native flowers that I put in the springtime. Eventually they should fill in, but at this point they haven't filled in and I have a lot of empty spaces all over. So I took advantage of grow bags to put in fall crops. And the reason is because I have the shade from the maple trees, allowing them to grow really nicely under the shade during August. And eventually if, let's say these guys start getting less and less light over time, then I can move them and transport them to a place with better light. So they're very flexible and very transportable. Let me show you how I grow in them. So the trick with grow bags is that it always uses more soil than one anticipates. And soil is expensive. I make my own, but I still don't want to go through so much, having to make so much soil. So I don't fill these bags all the way. I fill them like 50 to 60%. The problem is if you do that, the sides of the bags tend to collapse in on itself. So what I like to do is I fold down the sides, and this way they're a lot more sturdy. They don't collapse in on themselves. And there's more sunlight getting to my soil. I have to start anticipating the fact that the light is going to change as it gets colder. The sun is not going to get as high in the sky, so there's not going to be so much light in this area. So today I want to move these grow bags over there where there should be more light. So I like, the flexibility of grow bags because they're just so movable like this, and you can move them wherever you need them to go, based on like conditions like light that you need, or maybe to protect them, like, in the summer from the heat. So they're all moved here, and now the most important part is to cover everything with insect netting, since it's still warm enough that pests are out there and they'll definitely chomp at my vegetables if they can. And keep in mind that this insect netting is definitely not 100% defense. It's not 100% foolproof. Pests will get through the defense wall, so I tend to put little clips just to try to keep the netting in place. Now that I've put my grow bags where I want them to be for the winter, now I want to show you what I'm actually planting here. Other than cats. Hi, cats! Here I've got some kale, some bok choy, mustards. Oh, and look, there's a freaking cabbage worm moth in there. Guess I gotta spray BT soon. This is a spinach mustard. And this is exactly what the cabbage worm does. It wreaks havoc in brassicas like this one. I think this was a choy, but hard to tell because it's already so ravaged. Here I've got some daikon, some western radish, some Japanese cabbage. This one's actually one of my native plants. It's an aster, and it's just got these beautiful purple flowers that the bees love. Now let's come over here to the rest of my containers out front. I've got more daikon here. This is my last tomato out in the front. I plucked all the rest of them. And it gets really nice southern sun, so even though it's going to get colder, this tomato should still mature its fruits. Underneath it, I have some daikon. And then these beautiful little rosettes basically are choy. And look how big they can get. Here I have some lettuces, and I chose to do red lettuces because they should be very cold tolerant. Here I've got some spinach coming up, some beets, and then this is my method for doing carrots. I grow it under a board because it's hard to germinate carrots when it's 80 degrees and higher, which it has been, even though it's been end of September, October now. So you put this board on just to help it germinate so it doesn't lose hydration. And then once they sprout, you can then take the board off. So earlier I showed you the havoc wreaked by cabbage worms. Now let me show you what these buggers actually look like. So if you start seeing green poop everywhere, that's these little green round things, you know you have a cabbage worm infestation. And as soon as you find one, there's probably going to be other ones. So you have to look around carefully because they're definitely there and they're camouflaged very well. They're the exact same color as like kale green. And if you let the situation get out of control, believe me, you will regret it. They will decimate all your precious crops. So when it comes to defeating cabbage worms, I use BT, which is a bacteria that kills cabbage worms specifically when they eat them. It's not considered toxic to anyone else like bees. And basically you just spray it on your plants. It's just kind of annoying when you have to spray it after each rain. And I find that even if it's not raining, I kind of have to like spray it every few days. Otherwise I start seeing these bugs everywhere. And you want to spray it on your brassicas, and that would include like choy, bok choy, all your kales, let's see, mustard, greens. And one thing I forgot was a brassica was arugula. So actually, I didn't spray my arugula only to find that they were just full of cabbage worms. And that's when I realized, oh, it's actually part of the brassica family. Radishes are also part of that family, so don't forget about radishes either. But stuff like beets and chard should be safe from cabbage worms. They're not part of the brassica family. Carrots should be fine as well. I mean, basically most of the autumn crops that I do are part of the brassica family, and it's really hard dealing with these cabbage worms when it's still hot in August and September. And also lettuces are not part of the family, so lettuces should do fine without BT, although with lettuces you'll find more like slugs to be the problem. And the thing about fall gardening and cabbage worms is that it's not like spring when everything is starting to wake up. So the worms are just starting to like start chomping on all your stuff, and maybe you get some like holes here and there in your vegetables. They don't look so pretty, not perfect at all. But when it comes to fall crops, if you let these cabbage worms go, they will absolutely decimate all your plants, just because the weather is on their side. That's why it's so important to stay on top of it. And you can tell my insect netting alone isn't enough. Like, I really have to do both insect netting and BT to make sure that I have viable plants at the end of all of my efforts. One aspect about not having a lot of space is that you have to constantly be thinking, well, how can I use the amount of space that I have? How can I still have my summer crops going while getting ready to grow some fall crops? And sometimes you'll be using that same space. So like here, for instance, I have a zucchini plant that's still going and I want it to go for a little bit longer. I don't want to just like take it out completely so I can grow some fall stuff. But what I can do is look at all the space I have in this container. Like this plant is growing vertically. It's not occupying all this ground here. So that's like really good real estate for me to put in some arugula today. And I'll still be able to have zucchini for, maybe a week or two. After that's completely done, then I can just lop it off here and continue having a container full of arugula. I'm here in my parking lot where I've managed to extend my backyard gardening out here. I had a strip of land, so I put in a raised bed over there, and then I also put in a fig tree over there. And then here on the asphalt, I just have some like container gardening going on. The thing about all this area is that it faces north, so in the summer, there's no problem doing backyard gardening behind that fence, but in the wintertime, anything behind that fence gets shaded out by the house. So out here, the light does manage to reach all this area. So this raised bed out here becomes basically my workhorse for winter gardening. So today I'm going to be putting in some plants here that I know are very cold tolerant that I want to last me throughout the whole winter. And basically by putting like a winterized cloth over this raised bed here, I'm basically able to grow stuff like kale for the entire winter. Like the kale can actually survive 0 degrees, -10 degrees here in St. Louis. So let's do some gardening here. So I've got my transplants here, and these are like very cold tolerant stuff. So bok choy, a mustard called Mizuna, and Tokyo bekana, which is a Japanese cabbage, tatsoi, very similar to bok choy, and Yukina Savoy, which is another brassica family member. And these should all be very cold tolerant. A lot of them are Asian vegetables. And yeah, let's get them in the ground today. So because I started them indoors, it's important to take them out a few days before planting to basically acclimate them. And that's exactly what I did. I kept them out for the last 3 days on the balcony, getting used to the outdoor sun here. It's actually been kind of warm here, like 85 degrees recently, even though it's end of September, October already. But so it was really important to get these guys properly acclimated before they go into the ground. Basically, because everything I just put in is in the brassica family, it's really important to cover this with insect netting so that the cabbage worm doesn't attack all my precious little crops. And in fact, I'm also going to put shade cloth over it because it's still going to be like in the high 80s in the next week or so. And these are pretty sensitive to heat. So let me put this shade cloth over, and not only should that give me some shade protection, but also it just helps to secure the insect netting in case it flies away. It's way heavier than the actual insect netting, so it actually serves to kind of weigh down the insect netting, so which can easily just flop over and fly away. So now everything should be pretty secure from the cabbage moth. But in case it isn't, I'll come back with BT tomorrow and spray stuff just to make sure that there's no like cabbage worms in the ground, in the dirt already. Now that I've shown you what I do in the parking lot, I'm going to take you into the backyard where it's going to have less light in the winter, and I'll show you what I do there. The reason I'm putting in lettuces on this side is because I know this part of the backyard will get less and less light, like come December or January. I know if these were cold-tolerant species, then of course the amount of light matters, which is why out there in the parking lot where they will still get light in the winter, I put the most cold-tolerant species. But lettuce, for example, is not going to last in December or January. It's just not that cold-tolerant. So the amount of light coming in really doesn't matter. It becomes a moot point because by that point, the lettuces will be done. I'll be done. I will pluck them and eat them. And that's that for this area of growth. So I'm done putting in all my transplants, and now I have all this empty space that I want to make use of. So I'm going to choose a quick crop like a radish today. And this one matures in 30 days. And it's an Easter egg blend, so it should be really pretty. Next up, we have the Crimson Giant here. This should be a radish on the larger side, like about 2 inches in diameter. I've grown them before, and they're just so pretty. They're just incredibly vibrant red. I also have herbs growing for the fall, so cilantro, dill, and parsley. And they're really afraid of the heat. So back in August when I planted them, I really wanted them to be shaded out by something. And so I did it under the trellis of the tomatoes because that would at least help and give some shade. And they survive pretty well. I also have green onions here, and basically I just bought them from the supermarket. When I was done using the green parts, I took the white parts and rooted them in a little thing of water, and after the roots came out, I planted them. And unfortunately, it's a constant battle with the squirrels because they like to dig it up, and every day I have to replant them. If they do root into the ground well, they will survive for years and years because I've had them uncovered during the winters of St. Louis when it would get down to like minus 10 degrees, and they would be totally fine even to the next summer. So I made the mistake of fertilizing my root vegetables, including my daikon. And that's why when I pick them, there's really no daikon, there's no root at all. It's just radish greens, which is fine, but I've learned my lesson. Best not to fertilize any root vegetables because it just makes them overshoot growing their leaves instead of their roots. So I'm going to just harvest these and try to cook with them, and I'll just replace them with new seeds, and hopefully they can grow some actual roots instead of just a bunch of leaves. I'm so used to fertilizing so much for tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini, and I just got a little bit too fertilizer crazy. And I didn't actually know that you weren't supposed to fertilize root crops. And now I understand why. Here's my harvest of today. I have daikon greens here, a fuzzy melon. So let's go eat now. This is my very first time making daikon greens, so I had to Google a recipe. I stumbled upon a Japanese one where you saute it in soy sauce and then you can put it on top of steamed rice. So you start off by cleaning and salad spinning the greens, and then you want to cut it into small pieces. Next, you put 2 tablespoons of sesame oil in a pan. When it's hot, drop the greens in there, get it coated nicely, and start sauteing it. Add 2 tablespoons of mirin, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. Let it simmer on low heat, letting the liquid evaporate. When the liquid has almost evaporated, now's the time to add 1 tablespoon of sesame seeds. Get it mixed nicely. At the very end, everything should be dry and you should be able to see the bottom of the pan. At that point, you can turn the heat off and put it on top of rice to serve. I hope you enjoy this as much as I did. Alright, that's today's video, you guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time. Bye!